Did you know that your inner critic is actually trying to help you? And today I want to dive into how that actually helps you as a neurodivergent or maybe highly sensitive person. Aloha, my beautiful one. Welcome to Energy Wave number 10 here on my podcast or YouTube channel, wherever you're watching. My name is May. I'm your neurospicy cyberwitch and here to help you get from overwhelm into a life of ease and self-empowerment. Because I believe we can all empower ourselves in a very magical kind of way. So stick around for that, or tap the follow button to get more of this, or come join my cyber coven where you'll get more free resources. And this very special series is, coming out for you directly to your email account. Yeah, but today I want to talk to you about this very special inner critic that we have, that voice, those stories, the triggers that we have that, show up and actually want to show us. And I want to take a little step back to share who that inner critic is, where that comes from and why it's there. Because in the end, it's that voice inside of you that actually just wants to support you. And, especially looking at us as ADHDers, we have been, how do you call that? Scorned so much as children for don't do this, don't do that. And we nowadays, everybody knows that especially ADHDers get that thing a lot stronger and a lot more often, get scorned a lot more often from their parents than other kids, because we are so much all over the place with so many things. So we've heard that all the time. So of course, that inner critic inside of us turns into that it keeps on telling us, no, you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do that. Don't do this. Don't do that. Right. So that's the perspective, seen from a therapeutic kind of way or distinction. I like to see it a little bit more Hawaiian, to put it that way. This is a concept that came from my Hawaiian teachers, seeing us as an entity that has 3 levels. I'm going to call them levels. So on one hand, of course, we have what connects us to our spirits, to our higher self. I would call it the divine or the soul connection that each of us has. Then we have our mind that we can use, because it's our mind is, or our consciousness. Let's call it our consciousness. I think that's a better word for it, because we can consciously decide to do this or that, right? We can, we can always consciously say, I want to do this, or I want to change something. And then I have the subconscious. And to me, the subconscious is the owner of our bodies. So every time that something sticks to us somewhere on our body, it is, collected from the subconscious, because we don't tell consciously our body to how do you say? For example, we don't tell our lungs to breathe. We can consciously, connect to our breathing, but our body does it by itself. We digest food. I don't tell my liver to do its work, right? Because it's doing its thing. So these are the things that we can, adjust, that we can tell our body to do, that we don't need our body to, tell our body, because it's already done subconsciously. And at the same time, that subconscious is also the one that collects, all those things that everybody tells us from the beginning, from when we are born. Our subconscious collects, okay, I'm not allowed to do this because then, I'm going to be scorned for that. Or, I'm not allowed to do this because then mommy's going to say I'm not good, I'm not doing it right. And then, all of those things are being collected. And let's call them triggers. Let's call them, beliefs. Let's call them programmings. It's like programming that gets in. And so the subconscious, I'm going to give it the name of subconsciousness. You can keep on calling it the inner critic. we'll always revert to that. We'll always look at, okay, so back then when we had a similar situation, it was better for us not to react this way. So our subconscious is going to go and tell our mind, please react like this, because this, in this situation, we need to do this so that we don't get scorned, or so that we don't get this and that, or so that we don't feel like that. So it's actually, the subconscious brings out the stories because it's all, keeping it. It's like a treasure keeper for us, or programming keeper, of all those beliefs. And then our mind can act or react in those moments. So a lot of the times, if we're not consciously connected to that subconscious, we basically are we are led by whatever comes from our subconscious. But the more we learn to become conscious with ourselves, with that inner voice, with all the stories and the beliefs that are kept in, and I'm looking at my whole body because that's where it's stored. It stores everything in there. And so whenever there's a trigger from the outside that reminds us of a special story, the subconscious is going to send the story up to our mind, and the mind is going to react. So the more conscious we are, the less this happens, because we can realize, and this is where I want to go with today's episode, is that we can realize that we don't have to be that, we don't have to react to what comes from the subconscious. We can actually look at it. That's the important part. Become the observer of yourself. It's something that we talked about in previous waves. So you're the observer, and you see yourself having a trigger come up. And instead of, feeling like, oh my God, this voice is scorning me again, and it's telling me not to be like this or that. And it's the whole stories are coming up that I've been telling myself, right? Instead of becoming the victim of those stories, what if you can actually connect yourself to your subconscious, become one with your subconscious, and also make yourself aware that in spite of having those stories stored in your subconscious, they don't define you. They don't define who you are, who you want to be. They are part of yourself right now, and they exist because that voice is still there, trying to keep us safe and trying to show us what wants to be healed. And the moment we start allowing that to have attention, to have a room to express itself in a less aggressive way, because for me, when the subconscious is not allowed to speak and not allowed to show itself that way, it becomes very aggressive. That's when we, suddenly come into a situation and suddenly start reacting, and then, and a couple of hours later, we're sitting there by ourselves, asking ourselves, man, why did I react that? The overthinking again starts going into, oh my God, why did I react like that? I should have done, something different. But it was your subconscious trying to save yourself from more pain. So even though that feels painful, how you reacted, it was trying to save you from even worse. All right. So the more we make ourselves aware of that, and that there is an entity, our subconscious, our inner critic, you can, name it whatever feels right for you. But there is this entity within ourselves that we can address, that we can talk to. And, the teachers that I had, if you look at the three entities that I told you, so the higher self connection, the mind, and then our subconscious, or our consciousness and our subconsciousness. And my teacher used to say that these, the consciousness and the higher self, or the connection to our soul, those two are like the parents, and the subconscious is the child. Because often it is, programming from when we were kids. So it's like our inner child. I like to compare it to what everybody else talks about when we talk about our inner child, because it's where the pain happened. And so if we learn to embrace and connect with that inner child, we can then transform things. And that transformation, that, making it into a conscious decision, that we can say, okay, next time this comes up, I don't need to react like that, because now I'm grown up, and now it's not, I can support myself or save myself on so many other levels. It's a very, very good tool that can help us. So yeah, I hope for today that this helps you see how you can maybe make a little shift within your own, system, and, make yourself aware of who you are, where you are standing. And whenever a trigger comes up, instead of, exploding into it, allow yourself to look inward and have a conversation with yourself, with that entity within you, to then hopefully transform it and not happen again. My dear one, this one took a little bit longer, but I hope you got this, I hope some of it resonated with you. I love the understanding that this inner critic inside of us is not something bad. It's not something that wants to make us smaller. It's actually just trying to keep us safe. And if we, give that space, there's so much healing possible. With that said, my wonderful soul, like I mentioned in the others, I think, please let me know what resonated with you, or what was like, oh my God, May, this is like, no, like I can't see myself in this. Or maybe you were like, oh my God, this spoke so much to my soul, and this makes me understand it so much more. Let me know. I'd love to know in the comments. And maybe I'll see you at some point inside of my cyber coven. Have a wonderful week. And like always, give yourself grace. You're a wonderful human being.